It's definitely a challenge to be a people leader. When you're new, fresh out of college, and you've probably never managed people before, like professionally, it can be challenging because you're going into teams of up to 100 people. But getting to know your associates, being an empathetic leader, and then staying consistent, because at the end of the day, like there's a job to do and there's policies in place and stuff. Being consistent, but then also, caring for your team and building a positive team culture and structures.
The JobGuppy podcast is on a mission to help career explorers and job seekers find out from real people what a specific career or job is really like on a day-to-day basis. Join me, your host, Chris Hodges, as we dive in and explore jobs with each guest. You'll hear from experienced working professionals with transparent, realistic, and job-specific insight about the daily roles and their career journey. We go on to explore other topics like job search recommendations and income and salaries. You'll hear answers to questions like, do I need to go to college for this job? How much college? What is your work-life balance like? What do you like or dislike, or what would you do different? And if you don't like what you hear about one job role, we discuss alternative job titles to explore related to the same industry. And my favorite part is the end, where the guest shares their inspirational insight and recommendations for the next person wanting to get started on their career journey. What can a career in supply chain management look like? Do I need a degree, or how will a degree help me? Do I have to be a people person, or what if I'm shy? If these are questions you are asking yourself, then this is an episode you will want to hear. Mariana walks through all these topics and shares what her experiences have been like working at Amazon as an operations manager. She was very shy and initially could not see herself in a leadership position, but she still went for it. And it was intimidating at first, straight out of college, leading a team of up to 100 people. But now, after 5 years in the role, she has grown into the position and she shares what she has learned about herself along the way. Word of caution, change is the norm in this role.
I am an operations manager at Amazon. I've been with Amazon for 5 years. I started straight out of college. I specifically manage two departments, the onboarding and training department and the quality department for a fulfillment center. As an operations manager, the main objective is just running the day-to-day operation. Typically, you have a group of managers underneath you that you are responsible for guiding, mentoring, and developing them and the teams that they also have under them, and just making sure we're meeting all of the site objectives and like the key inputs like safety, quality. You're partnering with everyone on site, but I'd say that the main point of an operations manager and like what we do is just making sure we're meeting our goals day to day and developing the team under us.
I'm going to try to walk through that a little bit and maybe dissect some of that. You have some examples of some goals?
I guess every operations manager has their specific department, so the operation is huge and is different across all different site types. Generally, there's an inbound department and an outbound department and a few in between. But essentially, like if you're inbound, you have a set plan that you typically create with your senior leadership team. I guess a lot of it has to do with cost or standard work things that we just have to do throughout the day. Sometimes a lot of it has to do with like associate engagement and things like that. It really varies for every department. For me specifically, it's more of a broad scope. So I make sure that we're meeting the training requirements and like compliance metrics there. And then for quality, ensuring that we're meeting the government compliant metrics that we have to meet around that space.
If I was breaking your time down a little bit, how much time do you spend just by yourself? How much time do you spend interacting with people? How much time is it in meetings? Are you out on the floor? Kind of like if you took this week, today's end of Tuesday, assuming you worked Monday and Tuesday, like what was that day like? What would your day look like from a time basis?
For me specifically, I have a few meetings a day. Most of my day is interacting with other people, whether it's a meeting with like regional directors or my site leadership team. But a very important piece of an operations manager's role is engagement, not just with the managers under you, but also the associates and the people out on the floor that are actually, doing the hands-on work. A typical operations manager is spending basically their whole day on the floor. It's a lot of walking. Most of us walk a couple miles a day, and some site types require a little bit more or less. but it's a very physical role, I would say. Like you're definitely walking around because you have to see the process and kind of you're really part of the day to day like movement of boxes or whatever your operation is. So for me, it's a bit 50-50 because my role is a lot of planning, and since I'm the only one in my role and in my department as an operations manager, I have to partner with more people externally from outside of my site. But like the operations managers on site outside of myself really are just partnering with seniors who are on site and other support team partners. A lot of on the floor.
So this is a job somebody's looking at. It needs to be somebody who has good people skills, communication. They don't mind talking to people all the time. They don't mind being around people all the time. They don't mind physically moving.
Yeah.
It's kind of a very energetic job. Now, that being said, do you think somebody that had a low energy level and didn't tend to talk a lot would be okay in this role? Or do you think even if they thought they were doing good, it's probably not going to be a good long-term fit for them?
I still think you could. Honestly, for me, whenever I was coming straight out of college, I was very shy. I never saw myself in a leadership position. I decided to just jump in and try it out, and it was a little intimidating at first. It can be a little scary when you're straight out of college leading a team of up to 100 people, but I think anyone can do it. I grew in the role a lot. I think it gives you an opportunity to develop leadership skills that most people wait a little bit further down the line in their careers to gain and to have that experience. I really think anyone could do it. Anyone can learn the role. I've seen a lot of very high energy people come into these roles and do really well. And then I've also seen a lot of people who you would think would be better individual contributors, but they end up having their own leadership style that still works for the role. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from looking into it and still trying it out. I was very scared at first. I was very intimidated by it because of my, more shy personality, but it really got me out of my shell and I've learned so much about being a people leader and it's helped me grow a lot. So
Yeah.
I think anyone could do it really.
I'm glad I asked because where that question was kind of leading was a follow up with, so you should consider that if you're making career selections. But what you're saying is that's not a reason not to do it. And there is, so don't rule it out. If this sounds interesting to you, go ahead and listen to the rest of the interview. Do you travel often in this role?
Not often. I've had the opportunity to kind of visit other site types, and occasionally there will be a training that's popped up, but there's not much travel. Sometimes you are able to visit other sites kind of in your region, but it's typically, on site. You don't really travel much.
And if someone did like to travel and, let's say you were just wanting to travel once a month somewhere, is that a possibility in your role or is that kind of just probably not going to happen even if you wanted to?
Not within like this specific role that I'm in, but there are many opportunities that you could branch out into within like still being within operations, but kind of more as a support team member. So outside of one specific site, sometimes we have like process engineering teams and they support multiple sites. So they're able to travel a little bit. I also have like a regional quality team and a regional learning team. They have many sites under them that they support and they get to travel around and kind of visit all of us all over. So within my role and typically like the operations role, you don't do much travel, but there are so many different ways to get into roles that do allow you to.
Planning, leadership, you're in a role of leadership. You have these metrics, you're going around and you're making sure everything's, in compliance. How much of the metrics and the compliance are you tasked with generating yourself or with a team, or how much of it is handed down to you that it's just the company policies, or they gave you the handbook and said, here, go implement this, or they gave you a blank notebook and said, you need to continue filling up the notebook and come up with your own stuff?
For my role specifically, a lot of it is given to me, like it's a top down approach, like specifically to my role, and I push it out to the rest of the site. And it's similar, it's the same thing for the operations manager. There's a goal, but I think there's a lot of ambiguity in the role, but you're able to kind of make adjustments and create your own plan to meeting that goal. And then outside of that, a lot of times sites will set their own goals or create their own processes. And a lot of the better operations managers that I know will, kind of look outside of the box and create some other goals or metrics that they'd like to track to, and it gets pushed out to the site. So I think one of the best parts of the role is that you have a lot of ownership over how you execute and what other things you'd like to focus on, but there's always going to be those main goals that are, given to you. Like this is the number or this is, these are the checklists that you need to meet. But there's also like working in an operation, there's always going to be a fire to put out or, there's a million problems to solve every single day. So yeah, there's a checklist, but there's just so much more that you get to kind of handle too.
No, so that's good. So let's dig into that a little bit more. Like because I'm trying to peel back little layers of what you're doing. You mentioned little things along the way, and we've kind of delved into some of them. So like fires you put out. You said there's a lot of firefighting going on. What might be some examples of what someone's going to have to deal with?
For instance, sometimes we have conveyance go down and you can't operate in your normal way. That'll impact you a lot especially if you have, hundreds of thousands of boxes going out of your operation a day and then all of a sudden you can't anymore. So there's maintenance or conveyance issues. There's, associate escalation issues.
What would your job entail if the conveyor went down? I mean, what did you have to do as Mariana, the operational manager? What did you do in that situation?
So as an operations manager, you have to act really quickly, make sure you're partnering with, the maintenance team to get that fixed and you have all of the proper precautions in place and then finding another way to get those things out if you can. There's typically a way to go around it. It's a lot longer and it's not usually the most efficient process, but if you want to continue going, it depends how well you know your process and how quickly you can gather a large team of people to correct the issue, and then also escalating to senior leadership and then above because they're going to want to know this is happening. We're not going to meet this in this time frame. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I think every operation is different in how you have to tackle the problems, but it's about how quickly you can solve it and how quickly you can escalate and gather your team around to fix it as best as you can.
So we talked about some execution, we talked about some reactiveness. What about on the proactive side? What kind of planning activities or forecasting does anything like that fall into your lap?
For my role specifically, I get to partner a lot with the senior operations managers who are typically doing more forward looking planning. So, depending on the time of year, sometimes we do like several weeks out, planning for, more busy seasons. But typically, it's like prior week, we're planning for the following week, making sure that we have the head count, making sure that we, know what volumes are coming or whatever. So I get to have a little bit more involvement in the planning part of it. For the operations managers, usually they also know in advance, but they're typically planning like prior day and start of shift for them, how they're going to execute to whatever they're coming into because you can only plan for so much. It's never exactly what you thought it would be, especially when you work in an operation like Amazon where we go based off of, customer orders. There is a lot of planning and the operations manager would be the one to do that and to make sure that everything is in place to execute to that plan.
Did you mention that you had some other roles, like maybe outside of operations manager? Do you want to talk about them right now?
Within my operations role is unique because I'm kind of like I would be the only one on site who would is in my role, and I manage smaller teams than a typical operations manager, and I report directly to the general manager at the site. Outside of that, I think a lot of operations managers also have the opportunity to do additional things, like have additional projects. So I manage some or I run some of the other initiatives at our site, like sustainability, and we have some affinity groups. There's a lot of opportunity to, handle things outside of just your regular role. And I think it just depends on the site and obviously like the company and what opportunities that they have.
And did the company come to you for these other roles, or did you kind of just have some initiative or start some groups? How did that come about?
Within the site, they select someone to support certain roles or certain initiatives, and then you can ask to join more. A lot of times, I've I've been at my site for so long that it kind of just became my project, I guess. But it's cool because depending on which operations manager, like how new you are or how what your bandwidth is, if you're available and if you're open to it, the opportunities are definitely there and given to you. I've never seen someone ask for something extra and not get it.
Yeah, I get that. No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
Did your college prepare you, for what you're doing now? Was college helpful? Did college tell you this is what you would be doing and it kind of matched your expectations? Or this is something that you just got your degree and then you found out later, here's all these things I'm doing and I didn't really know that in college?
Honestly, yes. I majored in supply chain management, which could go in many different ways, but I actually did have a class called Managing Productivity and Quality, which is basically what I went into whenever as soon as I graduated. I think it did give me a good baseline. I learned a lot about, Lean Six Sigma, and we do talk a lot about process improvement, and we have a hand in all of that too as operations managers. So I actually really enjoyed my degree, like learning supply chain management, and I am happy I went into operations. There's only so much they can kind of show you about the leadership aspect of it, and I don't know how many people go into an operations manager role with such big teams, but I do think it gave me a good baseline, and I learned a lot that I have a lot of peers who did not study supply chain management and they fell into this type of role. And I think for them, it was more of a shock of like, they didn't know really what to expect, but I was fortunate enough to kind of have that.
No, that's a very interesting perspective, and that you have peers that you can actually compare your relationship there with your college classes. And what was a class that you said made the biggest that kind of exposed you to that?
It was actually called Managing Productivity and Quality. And I mean, that's a lot of what we do. And I also had a lot of, I think it was called Lean Six Sigma, and like those classes helped a lot too, understanding, process improvement. And it's been so long, but a lot of my supply chain classes really applied to what I do now.
Kind of circling back real quick, do you do a lot of math or PowerPoint presentations that you have to create and present?
Yes, within my role specifically, the quality side, I do a lot of deep diving, so I have to do a lot of research. It's not very complicated math at all, but I do have to present that and then also present solutions and present actions that their team, like that the senior leadership teams and the rest of the site needs to follow. So I typically have people under me who are putting those together, but a lot of what I do too is my own deep diving and then supporting the actions that come from that. So really the math it's not super complicated.
It's just more about analyzing and deep diving.
Exactly. It's the deep diving and understanding what you're looking at and how to fix the problem or how to improve. I think that's the more challenging part, but as you understand the operation, it gets easier.
Was there a point where you just knew this is what you wanted to do? Did you go into college like that? Were in high school you wanted that? Like when did dots start connecting for you?
So I went into college. I did my first 2 years. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I luckily at the University of Houston, which is where I went, they do offer the supply chain management degree. And I looked into it and I thought it was very interesting because there are many different areas of supply chain management you can go into. I know a lot of people went into procurement, and it applies to many different fields, I would say. So I think that's really where I got my foot in. And I do think the University of Houston also like had many resources too. Like I had a general business class where they spoke about each of the different degrees, and there was a lot of information out there that kind of made me more interested in it. And yeah, I did not know initially, but it was the most interesting degree that I saw there, and I'm really glad that I chose it.
And did you do any interns or anything while you were in school? Or you just graduated and then started into the industry after graduation?
I did intern with an oil and gas company my junior year. It was more of like an analytics role. So I did I created some tracking mechanisms for that. I had that small internship, and then directly after I graduated, I started in operations as an area manager.
If you could, maybe just quickly, you don't have to get into what each role did along the way, but if you could, if there are specific titles, that as your career has progressed, could you maybe just walk through your career path?
Yeah, so I graduated with supply chain management from the University of Houston. I actually started as a level 4 area manager at Amazon. I then moved into an L5 area manager, which is more of like the same role, but more of a mentorship role, where you kind of support other area managers and take on a little bit more responsibility. I then went from a regular area manager to a quality area manager, which has a more broad scope and a smaller team, but you kind of have more interaction with external partners like outside of your site. And that's kind of where I learned a lot of like what I do now. I then launched a site as the learning quality operations manager. So I took on the entire quality team and also the onboarding and training team. And I've been doing that ever since. So to recap, started as an area manager, moved into the operations manager role, taking on onboarding and training and then the quality department.
That's actually pretty impressive for 5 years. So, is there anything about your job that you think people would be surprised to know that surprised you?
I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much, honestly. I think if you look up the reviews about an area manager role, it can kind of scare you a little bit, but it's really rewarding, honestly. It's a to watch people and to support the development of people is awesome. And there's a lot of ambiguity, which I think some people take as negatively, but it gives you so much ownership and opportunity to like make big changes. And usually with such big operations, you really can't break anything. So you have the ability to kind of try things out and to, change things up as you go. And I really love that about the role. I think it's really fun. There's never a day that's the same. Every single day is different and there's always a new challenge. And honestly the growth never ends. I think I learn something every day. That's my favorite part of the job, and I was a little surprised at how fun it could be.
Well, that's a good outcome. Is there anything that you dislike strongly? Anything that just kind of like, that wasn't what I expected. I wish I didn't have to do this every day. This is one of my beefs, that I bring up every now and then.
I wouldn't say it's something that I dislike, but I think one of the challenges that a lot of people face is like constant changes. Really, no day is the same. As an operations manager, whenever you have so many people under you, you have such a large group of associates or managers that you're leading. Whenever these changes come, it's hard to get everyone on board so quickly, especially when they change so frequently. So it's something that you definitely have to learn to kind of master within your role, how to make these changes quickly when they're happening so frequently. But it's inevitable, it's just part of the role, but it's definitely one of the bigger challenges, I would say.
So change is kind of the norm. Your work-life balance, are you happy with it? I have to be careful here because some people will say, I love a 12-hour challenge. And so, they're like, my work-life balance is great. So it's not just so much if you like it or not, but maybe, how is your work-life balance in general, whether you like it or not, just so somebody listening could kind of know what would be expected from them. And then they can decide, I don't think I like that, or wow, that sounds like I'm up for the challenge.
The days are long. I'd say typically an operations manager will have a shift, a set number of days. A lot of times it's, at least for where I work, it's a 4-day work week. You do have longer days because of that, because the shifts are longer when you only work 4 days a week. But during busy seasons, you are expected to work a little bit more, like an extra day. It can seem like a lot, but I know everyone that I work with, and myself included, we kind of have learned how to adjust and like work around our work schedule. I think sometimes it can be, it can be a lot. It can be challenging, like especially when you're walking so much and you're on your feet a lot. But honestly, a lot of people love it. They love being active and being out on the floor. Over time, over the 5 years that I've worked in operations, I've learned how to kind of manage my work life balance. I do feel fortunate in my role that I have my set schedule. I know when my meetings are. I know when I meet with my team. It's all about how you kind of schedule out your day and how you know, prioritize your tasks and what you have to get done. It's a long day. It's your team will usually work 10 hours, but that means you work 12 because you sometimes come in earlier, sometimes stay later to finish up all the additional things. But
it is give and take, and there's some balance there. It sounds like it's heavy, but then it's pretty light. It's not just heavy all the time. Somebody should be prepared for that. And is that more typical of your specific role at Amazon, or is that just something that's kind of common in the industry overall? You know, if somebody was considering getting into supply chain management in general.
it's probably more common within operations, especially within like warehouse and fulfillment operations. I'm not sure about other fields within supply chain management, but my role, it depends on how I do it because some days I'm there very long, other days, you know, I work 8 hours, but my role is a bit more flexible because I have other people under me running those shifts. But yeah, I would say like the days go by very fast because you're so busy and you're running around all the time. But yeah, I think within like at least warehouse operations, this is pretty common.
Do you have to maintain any like ongoing learning certifications?
No, I'd say like company specific things, but nothing outside of that.
Because I do know like the Lean Six Sigma stuff. You know, sometimes people do extra stuff there, but nothing's required of you.
Not required, but that is definitely helpful. I do know a lot of people within the industry that have that, and it's been really helpful for their roles.
So moving on to income, and I try to approach this as sensitively as you may want to talk about it, whether it's, you know, some people are just wide open and say, you can find how much I make on this website. And so they'll say specifically to the dollar. Some people will talk about it generally speaking, you know, or relate it to other career fields. Something I do like to look for is kind of like, you know, where is some of the starting levels, and, you know, and then how much can it grow? And is it kind of a capped level? You know, like you're going to maybe start at 50,000 and the most you'll ever get out of this career field is 150, or you're going to start at 50 but you could end up at $1 million. But just given what insight you have in your 5 years now, like if you could share with somebody, like, is this a good job? That's however words you would like to choose there.
I'd say from what I've seen at least, starting off, you know, as an area manager, you can start around 50,000, I would say. And then operations managers I've seen from like 110 up to 140 for that range. Obviously, I think it all depends on many different factors, but that's at least the range that I've seen, typically like posted for job postings and stuff like that. So I think there's a wide range. I think it's a, you know, it's a great place to start as an area manager out of college. Even if you have some experience and you come in as an area manager or an operations manager, you know, that's around the range that I know of personally, but I don't know the specifics really, like for everyone.
You mentioned on the job postings on for Amazon specifically, do they list some of the ranges for the jobs when they post them?
I believe so.
Do you know, kind of like, is this a pretty high ceiling? You know, are you getting up into 500s at some point in your career with your major working at Amazon? I guess you talked about the career ladder where you are now. Do you know what those next few rungs look like on the ladder and where they kind of grow into?
Yeah, I do know that within Amazon, at least they offer RSUs, and that kind of helps build over time and over the other roles. I know that the level 7 and the level 8, so I'm a level 6 right now. The level 7s and the level 8s, I think, you know, you can get up there. I think I wouldn't quote me on it, but I've heard around maybe 300K, and I know Amazon's such a big company, there's so many different ways to go. I'm really not too sure.
That's a good lifestyle. Yeah, for some people, it's not too shabby. You know, is there any benefits that you would have of adding any learning credentials at this point, 5 years into your career, that might help some you, or, you know, someone that could go and, you know, I don't know what else you would go get at this point, but is there anything that would boost your income if you were to go do it now, some extra classes you took or anything?
Yes, but typically within at least my company, you won't really see that change if you get your like additional, like if I were to get an MBA right now, I don't think they would increase my salary based on that. But I do think coming in, if I were to come in as an operations manager, that would probably help me getting an additional degree. Or if I wanted to move into a different role, I think that would help as well. But like if I were already in role getting an MBA, it wouldn't really make a difference. But I do think after 5 years, an MBA would be something that I'd look into and I'd start aiming towards that just for my own work.
Are there any schools that are programs that are, I like to call this kind of a golden ticket, like for your role specifically at Amazon, getting into area manager, operations manager? You went to University of Houston, but are there things just known in the industry that if you came from this special school over here, or you had this special degree or this special certification, that it's just going to be a no-brainer? You're going to just take off like a jet once you get into the company? Is there anything like that, or is it just more wide open to anybody is welcome and can do it?
I think now it's a lot more wide open. I think if you go straight into an operations manager role, I think they look more so on your experience, and also if you do have some sort of either management or like operations related degree, that's super helpful, especially if you have any like Lean Six Sigma certifications. That's really helpful. I don't know of any one school or one thing that they would look for, but as an area manager, I think it's more open, especially if you're, a college hire. I've seen a lot of people come in with engineering degrees. I've seen people come in with, management degrees. So it's more open, honestly, I think.
I wouldn't have expected it to be that open. Good to hear. Going now into the job search. I think we've used the words a few times: area manager, operations manager. If you were looking, what would be some specific titles to look for? And then are these posted anywhere, like on Indeed.com, LinkedIn, or is there a place like Amazon, or do they have their own portal where somebody's going to see more jobs on this portal than they're going to see on Indeed or something like that? What advice would you have for a job search?
I would definitely say look into area if you're, coming straight out of college, I would look for an area manager role and operations managers. So I actually applied for my role through LinkedIn. I know that we almost always post there, and I even see like through my LinkedIn profile many other operations related postings. I couldn't tell you if they were on any other platform.
Amazon's an obvious name. Yeah, that's where you work now. Everybody knows that. Do you have any other big names, like some companies that you might recommend people look into if they're not interested in Amazon, or maybe they got passed over, or they just, for whatever reason, they're looking at, Amazon's in the list and they're looking for 3 or 4 more companies to add to their list? Are there any highly recommended companies to maybe start your career at?
I actually know a lot of people who worked at Target, Walmart. They're all very similar operations. I know like they usually bring some great experience from those. I think, within supply chain management, you could really go anywhere. I have a few friends who I went to school with. They went into oil and gas, especially University of Houston. There's so many oil and gas companies in the area. People went to HPE.
So it's pretty diverse. I've actually heard if you can survive at Amazon for 2 or 3 years, that's a pretty good way to start a career. I'm on the engineering side of things, but I do hear engineers say if they can stick it out for their launch a career, stick it out for 2 or 3 years, that pretty much any company will be like, well, if you could do it there, you're probably going to do pretty good here.
Grit is definitely important here at Amazon, but it's a really great company.
Do you ever do any hiring?
I do. I usually interview for the area manager position now. I'll support some of those and occasionally other support team interviews.
If you are a hiring manager, what are you looking for from a person during the interview?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I look at for the role is how quickly and like the ability to solve problems, because I think that's really what we do most of the day. So how they're able to solve problems and how sustainable and like forward looking their actions are. So not just a quick fix, but how did you fix it for the future? How did you fix it for the entire organization or whatever area you work in, how sustainable their actions are. And then another big thing that I look at is people's ability to lead and develop a team. Even as a college hire, I know you don't get a lot of opportunities to lead big teams maybe within your, college experience, but even how they led a project and how they were able to delegate or organize or those smaller things that are really critical to the role. Those are the things that I look at. People's ability to kind of shift and adjust when things aren't going the right way, because that's another thing that happens all the time. It's like it never goes perfectly. So I love hearing stories about how something kind of took a turn and how they were able to bring it back on track. Especially as a college graduate who's looking for these new roles, there are definitely ways to find those stories within your college experience or your other job roles that you've had prior to graduating. And that's really what I look for, people's ability to solve problems, adjust quickly, and yeah, create like sustainable action.
To your point about people graduating college thinking they may not have a lot of experience, one of the interviews I did, the person shared travel, get out and travel. You can do that in college. Try different foods, go to other parts of town, just build experiences. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a work experience. You could drive down the road in a part of town you're not familiar with, have a flat tire. How did you react? What did you do? There's a lot you can learn about yourself. There's a lot you could speak to in an interview. I do think there's a lot of things that people can do before they actually get into the industry, but it does require getting out and, experiencing things. Is there anything you would have done different?
Like I mentioned earlier, when I started, I was really shy. I was a little intimidated by like, such a big operation. Advice that I give new managers, especially new area managers, I onboard a lot of college hires. It's to not be afraid to one, ask questions, and to just try. Even if you don't know everything, just jump in, get started. Obviously, ask questions. You do have a lot of support. If you wait and if you hold back, you miss out on a lot of opportunities to fix things and make things better on your own and like take ownership over fixing something or creating a new process or even developing your team, and then just focusing on their team and the development of their associates. It's definitely a challenge to be a people leader. When you're new, fresh out of college, and you've probably never managed people before, like professionally, it can be challenging because you're going into teams of up to 100 people. But getting to know your associates, being an empathetic leader, and then staying consistent, because at the end of the day, like there's a job to do and there's policies in place and stuff. Being consistent, but then also, caring for your team and building a positive team culture and structures.
Are there things that you've done after you graduated to help with some of that? Like you mentioned, leadership, being empathetic, being an empathetic leader. How have you grown your skill set in that area?
Yeah, for me, honestly, it was just through the experience. When I first started, I had over 100 associates directly reporting to me. At the time, a lot of them were even older than me, and they I wouldn't say they gave me a hard time, but they definitely challenged me. But I think I grew the most by getting to know my team and hearing them out, listening to their challenges, and then being able to explain to them the why behind everything I did. And I think that's very impactful when you run a team is, not just barking orders, but telling them why, explaining it, and making sure that they understand why and what they're doing and what the goal is. That it's very easy as a team leader or manager to such a big team to kind of just say, hey, this is what we're doing, go do it. But I think it's important to the people under you that they understand and also that you take the time to get to know who they are, and you support their development and what their goals are. So I had to learn that early on. Just I get feedback from my team. They'll tell me like, hey, I don't like this, or this is what I'm looking for. So yeah, it's just jumping in, doing it, not being afraid to one give feedback, but also receive it.
So it's pretty organic. It's not like you had to
Yeah.
go and you have leadership programs you did or anything like that. It was just organically, and you're smart. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and also, so as an area manager, my operations manager was there guiding me. So that's kind of our role as operations managers is, being that mentor, supporting your area managers in developing their teams. Like I was able to bring that experience and what I learned from my operations managers to where I'm at now, and now I do the same to, the people under me to make sure that they're running these successful teams.
In these roles as area managers, operations managers, do you see any benefit to going past a 4-year degree in college before jumping into the industry? Like if you get a PhD or a master's in something, that it's just going to be so much better, or where is the benefit or is there not a benefit there, in your opinion?
I think maybe for the operations management role, so if you were to jump straight into a level 6 role, I think if you didn't have as much like operational experience, I think maybe that would help you. And outside of just these roles, maybe if you were, which it's very rare to come in as an external level 7 or level 8, but it does happen. And those individuals typically do have higher level degrees. But if you're just starting off as an area manager, I don't think it's as necessary. I think a lot of what you do is stuff that you'll learn it. And then we also have a lot of the like people who have moved up through the ranks to the L4, 5, 6 levels. So if you're coming externally, having a degree is helpful to starting at a level 4, but you can also get there without a degree, but by starting at maybe a lower level and then making your way up, which we have a lot of amazing leaders who have also done that.
Okay, and that was actually my next question. So you've already answered it. Can you do this without a degree, and how would you go about that? And it sounds like it's wide open. It's available. You don't need a degree to get into it, and you can work your way up through the different levels. Pretty high up. It even sounds like without having the degree, just by proving your merit.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the amazing parts of like working for such a big company like Amazon. You would have to start as a tier 1 typically, and there's so many opportunities to move up. And yeah, if you don't need a degree to even get to my level, you just need the time, and the experience within the company to get there. But I do know a lot of people who have made it pretty far without a degree and starting as a level 1 associate. So it's definitely out there.
Would you say the degree helped get there a little faster, though? Like for you, you
Yeah.
started? Okay. So there is a benefit to it, but it's not a requirement to get into it.
Yeah, it would take a lot longer to get to the like salaried leader position if you didn't have a degree. I don't think you can come in as an external level 4 and up without one, but you could get there, over time.
Do you have any, as a final parting words, any, inspirational words, stories you would like to share with the next little Mariana getting into school? Wondering if she can do it. What should she do?
I mean, I would say you can definitely do it. It's intimidating. It's definitely not like a glamorous corporate office job, but it's so rewarding. It's so fun. I've learned so much in just the 5 years that I've worked in operations. I really do enjoy like the leadership aspect of it, the process improvement aspect of it, but I think anyone can do it. It's easy to kind of shy away from a role like this where you have to interact with so many people and lead people. I think a lot of people look for jobs that they'll say are fulfilling. And for me, this is a role that is very fulfilling. I get to watch people promote. I've supported a lot of people start from the tier 1 to tier 3 to becoming managers. Like I've worked with people who, have had maybe some challenges who are now doing amazing. And it's really great to see you meet some incredible people throughout your journey. And honestly, it's a very rewarding path. And I think it's challenging and it's fun and it never gets boring because there's just always so much going on. And yeah, you get to do so much. Like outside of just leadership, you get to dabble in process changes and improvements and all the things. I think it can be a lot of fun for a lot of people.
Thank you a lot for sharing your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If you like what you hear and want to take the next steps in exploring your career after listening to an episode, go to JobGuppy.com to see a summary and helpful links to things mentioned during the interview, like industry-specific forums or websites, example job searches, career ladders, and degree programs or trade school recommendations. The hope is you now have more information than you did before from the guest on the podcast to help you move forward with the next steps on your career exploration journey. Tune in each week as JobGuppy continues to explore a million jobs in the sea.